Hey there, it's another beautiful day and I've got my coffee. Let's watch some stuff.
Have these in-between spaces ever made you feel uneasy? You're probably not the only one. Known as liminal spaces, these areas exist in a state of transition or in-betweenness, where the familiar structures and boundaries of our everyday world begin to break down. This creates a sense of disorientation or unease, as we're not sure how to navigate these spaces or what to expect from them. Liminal spaces often have a sense of abandonment or neglect, which can make us feel like we're entering a forbidden or taboo area. The lack of human activity or care can create a feeling of isolation or emptiness, which can be quite disturbing. We might sense that these spaces are unsafe or unpredictable, and so our bodies and minds respond with a heightened sense of alertness or anxiety. Liminal spaces tend to evoke a sense of the unknown or even the supernatural. You may feel like you're entering a realm that is beyond understanding or control, where strange and inexplicable things can happen. So with that, I have to ask.
This is especially true of familiar places. We had a home that we sold a couple years back and we lived there for 7 years. And this is the home where my children grew up, and my grandfather lived with us and he passed away with us. And we cleared the house out prior to actually being sold. And it was just so eerie to walk into that house as it was just empty. Just knowing what used to be there and knowing that it's waiting for what's to come next. It's an eerie feeling. Excuse me while I take a second and thank you so much for joining me for today's coffee talk. If you're having a good time, maybe you'd consider hitting that subscribe button and come back tomorrow because I'm making a new video every
Civilization began about 6,000 years ago. That was the view for decades. And before that, there was no such thing as civilization. But then suddenly, out of the blue, comes Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which is 11,600 years old. It's 5,000 years old than the supposed oldest megalithic structures, and it's a enormous megalithic structure, probably the biggest megalithic structure on Earth, because so much of it is still underground. We know what's there because of ground-penetrating radar. Highly sophisticated, 20-ton pillars, beautiful astronomical alignments, buried, deliberately buried by the people who created. They ran it for about 1,000 years, and then they deliberately buried it. And archaeology is still struggling to explain this.
I wonder why they would have buried it. It says they intentionally buried it. Like, were they trying to preserve it for future, generations or something? Or did they know something was coming and they buried it before it had a chance to get destroyed? Or were they trying to like they knew there was going to be a reset. They figured it out. And they were like, ooh, let's bury this for our future civilizations so they know what happened. I don't know. That's what do you think? Let me know in the comments if you think it was buried intentionally and why. Or do you think it was the mud flood? Either one of those is pretty plausible. But I think it's super cool that we found that there is proof of civilization previous to the 6,000 years that was originally hypothesized.
There is strong evidence that there were gigantic nuclear explosions on Mars before we even knew Mars existed, before humans existed.
That's crazy.
If you look at the surface of the planet, there's all sorts of geology very similar to Earth, that there's plenty of speculation and evidence to suggest that they used to have oceans and lakes and rivers and all these other things that would go along with a planet that had the crucial elements to sustain life. And the question has always been, well, what happened to it? The atmosphere is completely different there, and it's completely different because it is non-existent. So when the Curiosity rover went to Mars, they're noticing was this element called xenon 129. The only places you find it is a nuclear explosion. They find it all over the place in Hiroshima. They find it in Nagasaki. They find it all these places where they've done nuclear testing before. And that is all over the surface of Mars, and at levels 2.5 times the highest ever recorded on Earth.
It said, did aliens nuke Mars? Personally, I don't find it completely impossible that our species began on Mars or even had a little, side venture there for a millennia or whatever. But I do think that it's not impossible. that there was some kind of huge war on Mars and some of them escaped and came to the neighboring planet, which was inhabitable at the time, millions of years ago. But yeah, it's not, I don't think it's impossible. I don't think it's impossible.
Truth or myth, giving kids candy or giving them sugar is going to make them hyper. It is truly, totally a myth. This is a cool clinical study. Effects of sugar ingestion expectancies on mother-child interactions. So what they did is they took a bunch of groups of mother-child pairings. The children were ages 5 to 7. They told half of them they would be control, and then they told them they'd be experimental, where control would get not sugar, placebo, and experimental would get yes sugar. But actually, they gave all of them not sugar. Then they asked the mothers to rate their children's hyperness after receiving the sugar or not sugar. And turns out the mothers who thought the children had got sugar rated them as being way more hyper. Your expectations have a huge result on how you behave and on the results that you perceive. There doesn't appear to be any true effect of sugar.
I guess it's all in our heads. Maybe it's the excitedness of having the treat that causes the child to behave in that manner. Like, oh, yay, I got to have my sweet treat, and they're just happy about it. And then they express it in their behavior.
Scary artifacts that should have been left alone. Archaeologists dug up an ancient black sarcophagus in Alexandria, Egypt, dating around 300 BC. Upon discovery, they had become ever wary of the possibility that the sarcophagus could be cursed. But we are humans and we never learn, so guess what? We opened it. Inside were the remains of 3 skeletons, ancient etched drawings, and ancient sewage water, making this a perfect gift. I'm just joking. There are many drawings of poisonous and venomous creatures around the sarcophagus, making many believe these are warning signs to keep away. And guess what they did? Scientists went through every single bone, but had to stop multiple times due to a terrible odor. The worst part about this is that many people actually believe the sewage water found in this sarcophagus was associated with the Fountain of Youth.
But of course, in the pursuit of information and science and knowing all of the things, we're not going to stop at warnings. Your ancient warnings mean nothing to science. But it's kind of cool. That's a really cool discovery. But I don't know how they think that sewage is in any way related to the Fountain of Youth. That's just gross.
It's finally time to talk about the Great American Cheese Conspiracy. The Great Depression, the dairy industry was on the verge of collapsing along with all of the other agriculture connected to it. So the government decided to just buy all of the dairy from these dairy farmers to maintain the price of cheese. They filled all of their food storage, like the government food storage, with cheese and like powdered milk and stuff. They had like $1 billion worth of cheese. They had to give it away. It was literally emergency rations for World War II. Like the soldiers got like powdered milk and cheese. The government literally had so much cheese that they ran out of room to store it. So they started putting it in caves, in literal limestone caves in Missouri, because they had nowhere to put all of this fucking cheese. But they still had too much cheese, and they kept buying it because without that now, the dairy industry would totally collapse. 1983, America had $4 billion worth of cheese in the cheese caves. So Ronald Reagan was like, why do we have all this cheese? I know, everybody says I hate poor people, and I do, but what if I gave all these poor people free cheese? And that's where government cheese comes from. Oh, and on top of that, they were giving it away for free to restaurants, and that's why all American food has so much f***ing cheese. That's why, like, there's stuffed crust pizza now. On top of that, the government was also giving restaurants money to advertise foods that contained cheese so that they could just get rid of all of this cheese. Think about how much American food is just straight up cheese. Like freaking mozzarella sticks are just cheese that have been battered that you eat. And if there's mozzarella sticks in the TGI Fridays commercial, they get government money. Those goddamn Kraft singles that we make grilled cheeses with, it's rehydrated powdered cheese from the goddamn cheese caves. Mac and cheese, grilled cheese sandwiches, these are staple foods for like Americans, especially poor Americans, because cheese was free and cheap. Also, you know why the 80s and 90s are full of all these crazy new cereals like Trix and Cinnamon Toast Crunch and Cookie Crisp? Because they could get paid to make these mascots. I am telling you right now, Tony the Tiger is subsidized by the government if there's milk in the Frosted Flakes commercial? And Americans eat so much cheese, you'd think that like we'd have eaten all of the cheese in the cheese caves, but no, because the government this whole time keeps buying more because the dairy industry now has lobbyists that lobby to keep the government buying cheese and putting it in the cheese caves. To this day, there is 4 pounds of cheese for every American. So call up the government and tell them you want your 4 pounds of cheese.
That is a lot of cheese. He also mentioned about the milk in cereal commercials. That is crazy. I didn't even think about that. So they get a profit because they're pushing you to buy the cereal, which in turn makes you buy milk. Well, most people buy milk. And then I just thought about how there's so much milk in the schools. There has been milk in schools for decades now, and they're like pushing milk on children. You get milk with breakfast. You get milk with lunch. They're giving everybody milk because the government has to buy it all. So it's got to go somewhere. So it goes to schools. And that is crazy. I read something somewhere about how humans are the only species of animals on our planet that takes milk from another animal and is the only species on the planet that consumes milk after being a baby, after infancy, which is interesting because your body doesn't actually need it. The government just needs to clear up some space in the caves.
Aliens watching us on space station. Part 1.
Was that real? I don't think that was an actual interview. That didn't look real. That would have been a much bigger deal, don't you think? It would have been a much bigger deal about them seeing aliens when they were on their way to the moon. Yeah, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. On that note, I'm going to let you go for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time, and I hope to see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Here's my cutting room floor.
3, 2, 1.
And do words. I can't do words right now. Previous generations, it is truly just in our heads that, our kids are getting all crazy after having sugar. Just don't give them sugar. It said at the beginning, did aliens nuke Mars? Perhaps civilizations. I can say a freaking word. It was just so weird being empty after having everything that was there. What the So if they deliberately, intentionally buried it, or what? That is a brain scratcher. Why would they do that? I keep saying us. It's not us. It's not we. We didn't live on Mars. We've never lived on Mars. Once upon a time, a long, long time ago, I knew what I was talking about. That can't be real. There's no way. I don't think that was real. I don't. No. I mean, I love aliens. I'm totally on board with there's aliens, but I don't. That would have been a much bigger deal.